There is a problem in contemporary higher education that we rarely name directly. Institutions continue to design curricula and governance around a model of the average student that no longer exists. Meanwhile, classrooms are filled with brilliant, hungry students from 20 different countries, many for whom English is additional, many with discontinuous schooling, many carrying the social and financial burdens of migration. When the governance scripts, the checklists, and program approvals don't match the reality of learners, the result is not just lower retention or slower progression, it is a structural failure of academic justice and mission. Today, I want to show you why the difference between pedagogical mapping and programmatic mapping matters, especially where more than half of your cohort is international, EAL, or non-traditional, and how to change course. The problem: old maps, new students. Most universities still run on an architecture invented for a national, full-time, campus-based cohort, a linear degree map, a 12-week teaching block, an assessment regime designed for normed performance. But today's student profile looks different. International and EAL learners bring diverse prior learning, different literacies, and different expectations. They also face systems, registration, attendance monitoring, assessment schedules, placement policies, and tutorial models that assume cultural fluency with academic norms. The mismatch surfaces in obvious ways: high failure rates in gateway modules, late attrition, invisible students who attend but do not engage, and ticking boxes for compliance, while real learning remains fragile. Those are the symptoms. The real work is to understand how curriculum governance, program approval, and compliance processes, what I call programmatic mapping, systematically produce these results when they are disconnected from pedagogical design. Define terms clearly: pedagogical mapping versus programmatic mapping. Let me be blunt, these are not synonyms. Pedagogical mapping is about sequence, scaffolding, cognitive load, and the learner's path. It asks, what does the student need to be able to think and do at week 2, week 6, week 12? How does language proficiency shape the way we assess? How do we build recursive practice, small wins, so confidence compounds? Programmatic mapping is institutional architecture. It describes credit, assessment points, module ownership, QA checklists, external examiner timelines, and what gets reported to Senate. It is indispensable, but when left to its own logic, it becomes the map the institution follows, while students navigate a different terrain. This matters because the two maps are rarely reconciled in an honest, evidence-driven way. The result: teaching teams comply with programmatic requirements, while students still fail to learn. We need both maps, but with pedagogy driving program design, not the other way around. Why this is especially urgent where cohorts are largely international, non-traditional, EAL. When a major portion of your intake arrives with diverse schooling and English as an additional language, every assumption about timing, tacit expectations, and communication becomes risky. Research and regulatory reviews repeatedly show this. National reviews of international student integration highlight language, induction, and social integration as recurring failure points for institutions that assume parity of prior knowledge and access to support. Pedagogical decisions that seem trivial in a monolingual cohort: the speed of lectures, the density of lecture slides, the placement of high-stakes assessment early in a program, become gatekeepers that filter students out. ANALDIC and similar language policy reviews demonstrate that being able to survive classroom talk is different from having disciplinary fluency, and that institutions must teach the plenary explicitly, not assume it. So here is the blunt truth: if your programmatic approvals still revolve primarily around compliance metrics, credit loads, and learning outcome statements written in abstracted language, you will design programs that pass audits and fail learners. The theoretical anchors we must use. Let me anchor this in robust theory. First, constructive alignment. Big's insight that constructive alignment ensures learning activities, intended outcomes, and assessment tasks are coherently aligned. Remains central. Learning design must be backwards mapped from what students should do and think, not forward mapped from institutional checklists. Second, curriculum mapping, work inspired by Heidi Hayes-Jacobs and applied across school and tertiary sectors, gives us a powerful operational tool, a visible, course-level map of content, skills, assessment, and formative supports that front-loads pedagogical decisions into program design rather than leaving them to module conveners. Third, programmatic assessment thinking, rooted in medical education literature, offers a model for continuous, low-stakes assessment that aggregates evidence over time to judge competence rather than deciding fate at a single high-stakes point. The programmatic model forces governance to stop thinking in discrete, isolated exams and think in evidence portfolios and learning trajectories. When you combine constructive alignment, mapped curricular scaffolds, and programmatic assessment, you get a curriculum that accommodates linguistic diversity, supports deliberate practice, and creates multiple points for corrective instruction. The common institutional failure modes and how they look in practice. Let me list typical patterns I encounter in audits. These are patterns, recurring design sins. Assessment first, teaching second. The module is designed around a single summative essay at week 6. No formative sequence exists. Students who lack academic writing practice fail. Governance says, assessment aligns with outcomes, but the alignment is rhetorical, not pedagogical. Tacit knowledge traps. Critical tasks assume cultural habits, seminar participation, self-directed reading, without explicit teaching on how to participate. International students do not opt out of discussion, out of disinterest. They are often acting from different norms about classroom authority and risk. High-load ownership. Program governance rests with an administrative owner who signs off on timetables and credits. Teaching teams are consulted too late to redesign sequences or to include language support. Box-ticking induction. Induction is an hour of compliance and a slide deck, followed by a referral to academic skills support. But referral rates show many students do not access help. The design assumption that students will self-refer is false, compliance masquerading as design. Learning outcomes are written in generic verbs, but nobody has mapped which activities build those skills and where language support is embedded. These failures are not moral failings, they are predictable consequences of governance structures that were not built for our current cohorts. 6. A practical roadmap. What to change and in what order. I will give you a pragmatic map you can use in your faculty to move from reactive fixes to systemic redesign. This is short-term work, stabilize, medium-term design map, and long-term reform, govern. Phase A, stabilize, 0-2 months. Run a rapid diagnostic. Map all high-failure modules and collect reasons from students in their own words. Short surveys plus focus groups. Introduce immediate formative safety nets, low-stakes drafts, scaffolded mini-tasks, and micro-feedback loops before any major submission. Deliverable, a short list of 3 modules with immediate formative interventions. Phase B, pedagogical mapping, 2-6 months. Convene a curriculum mapping workshop for each program team. Use a simple template, week concept, language demand, skills practice, formative task, summative task, make language demand explicit, rewrite a program-level learning trajectory, show how disciplinary literacies build from novice to proficient across the program. Show these maps to QA and to the learning support team. Phase C. Programmatic alignment, 6-12 months. Revisit assessment policy. Move towards programmatic assessment where possible. Multiple low-stakes measures that feed into a learner profile rather than one pass-fail gate. Adjust governance criteria for validation panels. Require mapped evidence of scaffolding for language. Placements of formative assessment, and a recorded plan for student onboarding. Change incentives. Include curriculum design and student success with international cohorts as part of workload allocation and promotion criteria. Phase D. Cultural and staff development ongoing. Run faculty learning modules on EAL pedagogy, constructive alignment, and programmatic assessment. Micro-credentials for staff. Create a rotational secondment between learning support services and departments, so staff share practice and avoid siloed referral models. 7. Evidence and authority. I don't offer these suggestions as ideology. They are grounded in what we know works. Constructive alignment produces better learning outcomes. Curriculum mapping makes tacit design explicit, and programmatic approaches mitigate the tyranny of high-stakes assessment that disproportionately harms students still developing disciplinary English. See Biggs on alignment, Jacobs on curriculum mapping, and the growing literature on programmatic assessment for practical models to adapt. Public policy reviews and sector briefs confirm this lived reality. Institutional reports on international student integration recommend explicit academic language support, inclusive induction and curricular scaffolding as pragmatic reforms, not optional extras. A provocation: governance must be pedagogical. Here is the provocation I will leave you with. If you care about educational outcomes, not simply regulatory compliance, you must change the locus of power in validation and QA panels. Program approval should not be a box-ticking exercise run by administrators who lack direct teaching experience. It should be a pedagogical act. Require mapped evidence that the program builds literacy systematically. Require program teams to show how the first 30 days of learning will intentionally make the borderland between school literacies and disciplinary practice visible and safe. Require language demand statements on module handbooks. Put staff training for EAL pedagogy on the same footing as training for assessment design. If governance insists on being conveniently abstract, so it can scale easily, your students will pay the price. An ethic of curricular justice. I will finish with a short ethical claim. Curricular design is a moral act. When we choose to base our programs on compliance, rather than on the lived pathways of learners, we choose convenience over justice. When we prioritize pedagogical mapping and programmatic integration, we commit to equitable learning, and that is the highest accountability an institution has. If you want practical help, I will prepare the separate solutions document I promised, a one-page curriculum map template, a programmatic assessment checklist, and a 90-day faculty sprint you can deploy immediately. Tell me if you want that as a printable one-pager or a slide kit for your learning and teaching committee. This is our honest critique. In our next segment, we'll dive into the implementation. Let's stop mapping for the auditors and start mapping for the humans. Design the curriculum your students actually need, not the map you inherited.